In this video, we're going to see how we can use REDSHIFT inside Blender. And in the specific, I'm using the Blender 3.4.1, which is not the latest version of Blender, but is the latest version that we can use with the latest REDSHIFT version. So if you want to use the latest at the moment REDSHIFT for Blender, you're gonna choose 3.4.1. I'm gonna skip the updates here. I'm just gonna use this version. And then I'm gonna go in the preferences of Blender, so edit preferences, and I'm gonna check here in the add-ons if Redshift it's in here, and it is because we explain how to download it and install it in another video, but I'm gonna quickly show it also in here. And all I need to do is just turn it on. And once we do this, we are almost ready because there are other passages that we're gonna see in this video, other steps that we need to do. So I'm also gonna change the language here in English because right now it's in my own language. So I'm gonna put it in English. Then if you're interested in Blender course, you can check it in the channel because I'm not gonna spend too much time talking about Blender. I'm gonna go forward and concentrate on Redshift. So I have this standard Blender scene here. I have the cube and I have a camera, I have a light. Now, these objects can also be used with Redshift, but we can also like get rid of everything and start from the beginning. And in the render settings here, I'm gonna change in render Redshift render from cycles, and then I need to click on the force sphere. Now, we can see here that there is a problem. Redshift needs at least one camera on the scene. Whether you're using it or not, we need a camera on the scene in order to run the IPR, which means the interactive progressive rendering. So I'm gonna quickly add a camera. This is just to show you again the basic things you need to do before you start. So now we have a camera, but everything turns black, and it's also saying rendering done. Well, that's not really a great rendering. Now we don't have any light, so let's start also to insert a light. Again, we go add. We have the standard Blender lights that we still can use, and then we have the specific Redshift lights that probably are better when we want to use Redshift. So we're gonna discover this in another video, but you see, if I apply a light here, then again on the right side, as we know, we have the settings. So we have the settings for the Redshift render here. And also I want to show you something. It's saying to me that not any device is installed. So we need to fix that. Also, we can adjust the environment. So that's another panel we need to address. And right now, even if I change environment, nothing happens. So the problem is that we need to fix the GPU or the license of the GPU and we're gonna see that. And also materials. We can see that we have now an add RS node. So you can do that and then click on the little button, then go in the shading mode or the shading interface. And in here, you'll find the old Blender nodes. You can just delete, and these are the new Redshift render nodes. So you're gonna work again with the specific tools for Redshift. Now, before we start, let's make sure that you have done these operations. So you have Blender 3.4.1, and you navigate into this link to get the zip file for Redshift for Blender. Then you double click in the zip file. You just need to click and drag that folder that it's inside the zip file inside this other directory here, which is for Blender. So it's C user and my name, and then app data, roaming, Blender Foundation, the version of Blender, and then here you see the file. And this is where I drag and drop it. So this is Blender 3.4.1. So you need to have that version specific. How you do that? You can just search it on the web. You find some information here. These are all the version of Blender. Well, now we are at version 4, but this is still good to work. And if we go here, you see that we can only download the last one, the latest release. But in this link right here, there you go. We have a list of previous versions of Blender. So this is where we can get the 3.4.1 and nothing above that. Otherwise, we don't know if Redshift is going to work. So following the instructions by Redshift, we're going to get this here. This is the installer. The MSI is the installer file. So you download it, double click, install. You can also maintain like 3 or 4 different versions of Blender if you want. You can donate Blender. And again, if you don't know how to use Blender, you can just check our course. So also here we can see the instructions for the add-ons. Here it says where it specifies the Blender version with the Redshift version. So I'm using the 3.5 of the Redshift version, and you'll find all the instructions here, which we already explained again in another video, but it's essentially a drag and drop of that folder from the Redshift folder into the Blender add-ons folder. So it's really easy. And again, it's shown also in a previous video guide, so I'm not gonna spend more time on this. I'm just gonna go in Blender 3.4, double click, and there it is. That we're back there at the beginning. Again, I'm gonna skip here the updates, and I'm gonna keep everything as it is. So the cube, the light, the camera, because we saw that we will actually need it. We can use them. Then if I type Redshift now, we can see it's already activated because I've already activated and then close Blender and then reopen it. So I'm just going to change here from Eevee render to Redshift renderer and then click on the force sphere. And again, it says here rendering done, but that's not the render. You can see everything is gray. So again, there is not something missing. There's something not good. So what I'm going to do, I'm also gonna add a plane for the shadows, and I'm going to add a monkey head so we can test better the render engine. And again, you can see everything is gray. Something is not working. Now, what is not working? So you use the right version, you use the right installation, but here, there you go. It says that I am having some issues with the GPU. The GPU is not recognized, is not linked with the license or something. Remember, Redshift is for sale. You need to buy it from Maxon. And if I expand this, you can see that there are some information here, some additional information. And if I go down, you see that there are like devices down there. So I want to turn these on. I want to check these on, which is my graphic card that I'm gonna use. And Redshift works mainly with the graphic card. You can also use the CPU or a hybrid, but I will definitely prefer the GPU because Redshift is a really fast renderer, probably one of the most the one of the fastest out there, and that's happening because of the graphic card. Now again, nothing is happening, so what I'm gonna do is just like change the renderer again, maybe go back to Eevee and then go back to Redshift, and there you go. Now it just happens. So hopefully it's gonna happen also for you. You can see this is cycles here, and this is Redshift. So we can just see the difference right away. Redshift is more accurate and also faster. And there you go. Now my NVIDIA is recognized in there. So make sure you read something in there on the devices. Otherwise, it will not work because it doesn't recognize the device. And I think that my device is somehow linked to the license. Otherwise, it won't work. So now that we know that it's working, we can see that up there, the progressive rendering, it's running. So every time I change view, every time I change something, it's going to restart the render. So I delete the cube, I add the monkey here, so we can work on something more interesting. And this is kind of the symbol of Blender. Now you can see I can use the Blender light. If I move the light around, it's going to work, and I'm going to see everything real time interactively. Well, that's not actually the real time render. We have two types of render. One is progressive and interactive. The other one is real time. So I'm going to add some subdivisions first, then I'm going to show you the differences between these 2D renderings, but you can definitely use the IPR or interactive progressive rendering. Now that I have more subdivisions, the monkey head looks also a little bit better. and we can start to move around the light. Now, if I go to add, I can also add more lights and create a more complex lighting system. And we can use the Blender lights, but I think it's better to use the Redshift lights. So I'm gonna use the Redshift physical light, and I'm gonna move this around, and you will see that it's gonna look like an area light. So it does have yellow dot that you can move around to point somewhere, and you can expand by using the little corners of that yellow square, and then you can get inside the light parameters, start to change the color and the intensity and so on, but nothing is happening in here. So the problem could be that, again, we are in the wrong renderer, or maybe we don't have any redshift material yet, so it's not working properly. But you can see if I change all the parameters in here, it doesn't work. So I'm supposed here to see something red, otherwise nothing is not working. So let's go in the shading. Now in shading mode, for some reason it works. So I don't know, probably it was the wrong render I was using. So this is, make sure that you are on Redshift render again, and now it works. So this is what it's supposed to see. You're supposed to, interactively set up the light, change the color, the effect, and so on. Now, in the shading mode, this is also where you can check the materials. And if I select the object, you can see this one here doesn't have any material applied. Now, we cannot use Blender materials. We need to use Redshift materials. So I can also do it here in the layout mode. Now it's working for some reason, also in the layout mode. I didn't change anything. Well, maybe sometimes it just gets stuck. And then I add here an RS node for the material. So now I have two different types of material inside the graph. One is the old Blender, which is not going to work. You can see if I change the material, it's not going to work. So I'm going to delete the old nodes, and I'm going to use the new nodes of the Redshift renderer. So in here, it's already linked, so I have an out color going into the surface. This is what you want to have when you want to work with the redshift material. And then I start to expand this, and I find all the values, all the parameters inside. So let's get into a really basic one, which is color. So if I change this now, make it red, make it yellow, you can see the difference right away. So also materials, redshift materials, they look better than the standard Blender materials. So overall, it's a better render than Cycles at the moment, but probably in the future things will change. But at the moment, Redshift it's more complete and fast and more accurate render than Cycles is. But again, things change. So let's see here. I'm gonna go into materials now. I can access also here some of the parameters, but most of the parameters will be in the shading mode in the material editor. Now this is the light, which supposed to be square, but it looks like a rectangle. So something also here is not properly working. So let's go here. You can see this is recognized as an area light, and then we can change here the type. This is a dome light, which is going to be like an environment light. And then I have IES, portal, physical, sun. So let's use the standard physical light. You can also add the nodes here. So this means that I will not work with the properties in here, in the properties panel. I'm gonna work again in the editor right here. So now I'm selecting the light, so I can manage the light from here. And I can change, let's change here the color again. So I can manage the color, I can manage the temperature and other stuff in here. Or I can just go back to the original panel. So also I want to make this a little bit, well, not so rotated. I want to make it more vertical. So if I change the view from the top view, I can see also better where I am positioning this. So I want to create like a backlight effect in here. So with a big panel, and again, it doesn't look the same shape. Also, I'm gonna copy this, Control C, Control V. I'm gonna make two, so I have like 3-point lighting system, which is gonna make things a little bit more interesting. But anyway, it already has a nice look. And well, if I don't want to use nodes for the light, we can also turn them off. So if you select the light, and we can change here the shape and the effect. Let's go back to shading. Let's make this another color. Let's make this like purplish something, so we can try something, more playful here with the light to see if. And these are kind of two backlights at the moment. Now I'm gonna uncheck the use nodes. So instead of using the nodes, I'm back here in the panel, in the properties panel. And also here I can turn on and off the light. I can change again the color. I can use the temperature. We're gonna make more examples later. I'm just going quick here to show you the overall system of Redshift, and then if you want, you can follow the next lessons going into more specific. Now decay also is pretty important. If you want the more realistic one, it's inverse square. Otherwise you have linear, which is kind of easier to calculate. And then you have none, which is going to, well, it's gonna take the decay off, so the light will not lose its intensity. And here we can change the shape right here. So now it works. So you can see this is a sphere, then a cylinder. And if I go back to rectangle, now I can change here the actual size, and it will look like a square if you want a square, or a rectangle if you want a rectangle. So this is how we can fix also this little issue that we still see on the other light. So again, also you can make it visible or not in the render, and bidirectional if you want to go both ways. And the spread also is pretty important if you want to make this more concentrated light, like a beam, or if you want to make it more expanded. Now it's not looking, we cannot really understand the effect because it's rotated. So let's fix this a little bit because it's rotated in an awkward way. So let's put 0 to all the rotation here in the sidebar, and I'm gonna type only in the epsilon here 90, so it's gonna be vertical. There you go. Now it's nice and vertical, so I can just rotate it with the rotation, and you can see the effect on the floor now. So if I change the spread, you will see a more concentrated beam, or more expanded one. So if I do like this, let me change this. Let's make it really low. You can see that it's not actually visible because it's going straight to the monkey head. And if I change the spread again, I'll make it more diffused, and it's going to be more expanded. So it's like working like with the spotlights that has wings that you can open and close. So also I'm going to adjust this other one and rotate it. Let me just rotate it manually, or here around the Z. So let's do like 180, and I want to do a circle with this. So I'm gonna go back here, uncheck use nodes, so I can work with the properties here in the panel and make it another color. Let me go like for blue, because these are the two colors that Redshift is using in Blender. So the blue and the red. And I'm gonna change the intensity, fix the intensity, the exposure again, the decay, and the shape with the disc or circle. Or again, can go back to rectangle. Let's keep the circle here. Let's increase it also a little bit. And now the spread, I'm gonna leave it high. And the samples, if you want to increase the quality of the light in the render, you can increase the samples. You can also have more transparent, or like less visible shadows if you want. And then we have other settings, but right now let's check only the simplest one. And you can see I'm still maintaining the light from Blender, the original point light. Now this is the vision from the top. Maybe I want to put this more from the side. Click and drag the circle if you want to point somewhere. Eventually it's going to snap to some faces of the character here. And okay, so you can see the effects better of the kind of a cone of light that it's emitting from one, and like the other one is has a more spread, so it's less visible. I want to delete now the light from Blender. I just want to use these two, and there you go. Now that we have this nice and dark scene, we do have a gray background, which is, you know, not so interesting. So the next thing we could address is the background. Now here we have some possibilities. We have environment, we have, and we can also turn this on and off, by the way. Then we have physical. So this is different from original Blender. In Blender, we only have like world. In here, instead, we have different types, and we have also this OSL and atmosphere, and then we have none, so without any background. And that's it. So let's keep now in physical, which looks really nice. And it's looking like an outdoor scene. So if I go back in the shading, now you can see there are so many nodes because I have changed so many times. So this one here now is using physical. This is the original Blender environment or world, so we can get rid of that. And these are the other two of REDSHIFT. So one is the RS environment, and then we have the RS OSL. And here we can do again some changes. We can also click and drag and link this other one in here. And we can also use the dome light. It's suggested to use the dome light if you want to use also lighting coming from the environment, like we do in Blender usually. So again, we have the parameters here, and this is now like a standard dome light surrounding the scene. But let's open here an image. We need an HDRI. Again, if you don't know what it is, check the Blender course or any other video about HDRI in the channel. Just type in the search bar, search for these. These are from Polyoven. These are images, spherical images from Polyoven that represent interiors or exteriors. Okay, now we apply that. We just need to wait. So now we have an indoor environment that we can use. And again, there are a lot of settings here, but let's add also a tint. Let's make this darker and more red for, you know, redshift, and make it a little bit darker. So there you go. We have a nice now environment. Now this is a light, which means that if you select it in the object panel there, you can also rotate it. I can move it around. You can see there it's visible. And then in the transformation tools again, if I rotate this using the Z, I'm gonna rotate the light, which means rotating the image because the lighting here is coming from the image. So this is the quickest like render you can do using just an image. It's called image-based lighting, and it's the quickest way you can do a render in Blender using Redshift or any other render engine. Now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna lock the camera. I'm gonna get in the camera. I'm gonna lock the camera to the view, and I'll choose another, you know, point of view. And then when I'm finished, I'm gonna unlock and then zoom in with the scroll wheel. And again, if you're having problems with all this stuff, just check the Blender playlist. So I'm gonna exit the camera or enter the camera when I want to go back in this view. So now that I created the camera, now I am inside the camera. I can go in the camera settings, again in the properties on the right, and I can adjust the focal length and, you know, things that we already have in Blender, but then we have like extra stuff like color correction, lens effects, post-production effects, and optical. Optical will simulate a real camera. So you can use with the use the exposure. You can work and decrease the darkness. You can change the white point, so you can balance and kind of doing color correction with this. And again, I want to go with something a little bit reddish or pinkish. Then you have vignetting, so darker corners that simulates the cameras. And then you have depth of field, so you can just click on an object, you put that in focus, and the rest should be out of focus. We need to adjust the aperture or f-stop or f number there to see better the blurriness in the defocus area. And then we have bokeh effects if we want, other advanced effects that you don't usually have in Blender. So that's another part that you can use with Redshift. We can say this is a Redshift camera. And also here we can add a background, which is going to override the HDRI. So we're still lining up the scene with the HDRI, but right now we're using a flat image on the back, which is also good. And then we have again other settings. I'm just going to uncheck the background overlapping here. I just want to see the actual HDRI because it looks really nice with all those neon lights on the back. Now be careful when you move around, especially if you're not in the camera. Be careful on the depth of field. You may want to readjust that because it's looking for the object or a specific distance. So I need to go back to optical and depth of field, and maybe instead of picking on one object like this, which right now is not working, probably again because we are outside the camera, but perhaps we can try with the focus distance. So you can see that if I leave the focus on object empty, I can change the focus distance little by little, and then I'll find the correct distance. And also make sure that in the, let me see what it is, in the aperture, if it's too low, everything, the defocus will increase. So make sure that perhaps it's not so low, and adjust it until you find the correct distance. So these are the basics of Redshift in Blender. So, and of course, then you have all the part about the render setup, the render settings. So you have basic mode and advanced if you want to have like more properties and things you want to tweak in here, like the global illumination, caustics, other stuff, and sampling. And then you have the basic, which is like simplified, and I really suggest that. So you just go there, set up the quality. You have bucket mode and you have interactive mode depending on what you need to do. For the final rendering, probably you want to use bucket, but otherwise you will use interactive progressive. And then you have denoising to get rid of the noise, which is a really suggested feature. And then you have trace depths. This is to increase also the quality. So you have many ways here that you can increase the quality. You can do it like with presets. You can adjust yourself the quality of the reflection, the refraction. And this is of course about also the materials. So you can also adjust the samples on the lights, on the materials. Increasing the samples will increase render timing, but also quality. And you can switch from production to RT, which means real time. So at the first, it's going to take some time because it needs to like figure out the scene. Once the scene is calculated, the real-time rendering will be even faster than the progressive rendering. Well, less accurate, more approximated for the global illumination and everything else, but really fast. So you can just move around and you can see everything real time, like in the video games, like Unreal Engine or Twinmotion and so on. So this will be all for this first lesson. If you enjoyed, please subscribe to the channel. If you want to support us, join the channel as a supporter. Check out other courses and video guides in the channel, and see you in the next lesson.